Hello everybody, World of Warcraft Classic has launched and it is taking the world by storm yet again. In this video, we're going to talk about everything regarding Classic and diving real deep into the information surrounding it. Also, I'll be providing a lot of my own opinions and thoughts on the game and on retail WoW as well. But whether you're interested in World of Warcraft or not, you'll at least be able to be a part of the conversation with this video and get, some information that will help if, your friends are talking about this. But for the most part, everybody is going to be talking about this launch for quite some time because it is rather interesting. But before we jump into all of that, let's quickly start off with a little bit of information. So I am playing on a PvE server in North America. It is the Pagel server. When the server list got released for reserving your name, which you could do like a week or two before the launch, we looked at them and we noticed that all of the streamers were going to be on the PvP servers, and we wanted to avoid that because generally speaking, with all of those people trying to jump in to play with the streamers, you're going to get into a situation where you have very long queues, which is a situation that did end up panning out. We'll talk about that. But also, we just didn't want to be on a server where, weird stuff could be going on at any given time event-wise, and we just kind of wanted the classic experience. So we jumped on Pagel, and that was the right choice, even though we've still faced massive queues. In fact, when the servers launched with Classic, we had 11 initial servers when, the name reservations went live after the launch, and since then, it has gone up to 30. So we started in North America, and I believe Europe started with the same amount. We started with 11, and then Oceanic started with like 5 or 6 or something like that. But since then, it launched on Monday night in North America. It is now Friday. It now has 30 servers, and we'll talk about why that is absolutely crazy in just a moment. I am playing a Warlock. I, in vanilla, played a Druid. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about that journey as well, but I wanted to play a Warlock because not a lot of people were going to, and it's kind of a fun little class that I've always wanted to be good at, so I jumped in and tried that. However, I am regretting that decision because I jumped in and made a warrior that I leveled up to level 10 while my leveling group was offline, and I enjoyed that way more than I did the Warlock. So I may end up leveling the warrior quicker than the Warlock, but we'll see. I'm currently at this time of recording this level 29, but in the video I'm like 27 or 28. So for the most part, I have pushed really far ahead of most people. I'm within the top 20 Warlocks on Pagel as far as levels are concerned. But earlier today, the very first level 60 worldwide finally dinged 60. So he's a streamer. His name's Joker. He's a really good speed leveler from classic servers, like private servers and stuff like that. So he kind of knew what he was getting in for, and sure enough, he raced right ahead and managed to get level 60 in about 3 days of playtime. That's not 3 days of like, 3 days has passed. It's like 3 days of straight game time in the game, of slash played. So that is crazy how much time has gone into that. But for the most part, it's not unexpected. In classic vanilla WoW, the average level time for someone to get to 1 to 60 was, and this is being pretty quick, was roughly 6 days of playtime. So now that people have kind of optimized it and know the game really well, 3 days for the quickest level up seems pretty reasonable as far as like a speed run is concerned. But the guy is a mage and he just ran around AoEing, farming everything. It's a very specific strategy. But yeah, it's the game launched on Monday night in the US, and it took until Friday to get our very first 60, and that was with these people absolutely no-lifing this game. And I feel like I've been doing that. I've been putting a lot of time into it, and I'm still only coming up on 30, so that tells you just how much time and efficiency that they truly have going on. But let's roll back this discussion several years to a previous BlizzCon where during a Warcraft panel, one of the people in the audience asked the question, will there ever be vanilla servers, like vanilla-only servers? And J. Allen Brack, who is the CEO and president of Blizzard Entertainment, now that Mike Morhaime has left, at the time he said, you think you do, but you don't. And since then, that quote has been thrown into his face several times, which, by the way, side note, don't do that. That's rude and it's harassment, and that's not cool, bro. Just be chill. You don't have to throw something back at somebody just because you think you're right. At the end of the day, he did have a good point. People thought that they wanted the classic experience, but what they didn't want was the lack of quality of life services that have come to not just the game, but the services as a whole since then. You know, think about Battle.net integration. Being able to see your friends playing Diablo or StarCraft or Hearthstone and being able to send them a message because they're online. You're like, hey, do you want to come join us for this dungeon? That kind of thing didn't exist back then. You had your Warcraft friends list, and if people were in World of Warcraft, you could see that while you were in game. But you didn't have Battle.net. You couldn't go and look at other people playing these other games. So, you know, not having that interaction with your friends would really significantly hurt the game. So kind of what he was alluding to, or saying directly in many cases, was you think that you want the vanilla experience, but you really don't. You want something that mimics the vanilla experience, but also provides some of those services that are really good for the game and are really needed, such as that Battle.net integration. And what we got was that. We didn't get the complete vanilla experience. If we did, you wouldn't have Battle.net integration, and you would have really crappy internet connection. Like, you would have all of this other stuff if you really wanted to replicate World of Warcraft Classic that you would have to take away, including your knowledge of the game, because if you wanted to absolutely relive the experience of Classic Warcraft, you would have to completely remove your memories of that, because otherwise your brain is already tainting the well as far as your experience is concerned, because you know that dwarf priests are really good because they have Fear Ward, or you know that mages can be pretty strong, and that as far as druids are concerned, you're not going to be tanking as feral. Like, you know that stuff. You didn't really know that back then. Like, the game, while people got to max level during the beta, they never really optimized everything enough to know what was good and what was bad. And min-maxing was few and far between at the beginning of Warcraft's existence as far as the end game stuff. So you didn't really know. And if you wanted to play the game as a full vanilla experience, you would have to kind of remove those memories, because otherwise you're going in with information that you shouldn't technically have if you were going to relive that vanilla experience. So my point is, while yes, it clearly, very clearly, the World of Warcraft community wanted the vanilla experience, he was also right in saying that they didn't want the true vanilla experience. They wanted a vanilla experience that was going to be nice to play, and that involves things like Battle.net integration, which means that Blizzard as a whole had to take a strong look at the classic experience and determine what they wanted to keep and what they wanted to add or change or remove. And that was difficult to do because they didn't have the original code for vanilla. So the result was, over that 3-year period, 2-year period where they're actually kind of developing and getting it up, they had to rebuild vanilla Warcraft on the Legion client. Legion being the Warcraft expansion that came out several years ago, and in my opinion is the best expansion that has come out since or ever for the game. But they were running the Legion client and are running the Legion client for Classic WoW because they don't have that existing base to go off of. So they went and restored everything back to its classic state, and they've done a really good job of it. But that meant that there were some intricacies, such as spell batching, like when spells actually hit or determine that they have been hit. You know, can you technically get a spell off or an attack off after you've died? Yes, because of spell batching and the way that it works on the back end. So things like that had to be recreated in vanilla Warcraft, because stuff like that doesn't quite work the same in modern day retail World of Warcraft. So this is all just like little things leading up to the launch that they had to go back and change. And of course, in the beta, it was really funny to watch people's feedback being like, wait, this is wrong. This, this is bugged. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And then Blizzard would come back with, no, actually, this is exactly how it was. And we can show you the proof. And they would, basically blow people's minds and go through their own nostalgia trips on, how the game actually used to be by providing a lot of facts to the players who don't remember things exactly how they were. And that is totally fine, because there were also moments where players would provide feedback and fix things that were truly broken. So it was an interesting beta experience, and it leads us to the launch of Classic, where the game has just absolutely exploded with popularity. And whether that is because of the hype leading up to it, or people kind of getting their friends back into the game, or just people hearing that it's going to relaunch and then jumping back in and playing, it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, it is really, really popular. As I said at the beginning of the video, the Classic servers for the North America region had 11 servers to begin with, and that was on Monday, and we're now at Friday, and there are 30. To put that into perspective, one of those servers, just a single server on low population, still has more players on it than original vanilla servers did at full population. And that's at low population. And almost every single NA server at this moment, -2, are currently full. Can you imagine how many players that is? Could you imagine what kind of server load that is on all these different servers? Or if you broke down, the actual population, I would love to know the population numbers of these servers and figure out just how many people are playing in NA alone, because it is absurd to think about the fact that these servers, which are all full population bar 2 in North America, and there's 2 fresh ones that just went up the other day, they're all set to full, but Classic servers were only set to low. And I do remember when Classic launched, this is kind of a funny little anecdote about this, is when Classic launched, it came out in November, and I remember trying to log in on the very first night, not being able to. The servers were down. I came home the next day, the servers were down. I came home the day after that, and you know what? I could get in, and I made my character. You know what I made? I made a Tauren Shaman. I started leveling it up, and my dad got in, and he started playing. We were playing together, and so did my dad's buddy, who was he was living with us at the time with his wife. He jumped in and started playing as well, and we got to the end of the day. The servers crashed. Couldn't play anymore. I got to like level 4 or 5, but the servers were just so laggy and so crashing, and it was awful. It was impossible to play the game. We came home the next day, or it was a week later. We came home one day, and the friend that was living with us had leveled up enough to go and get ganked because we were on a PvP server, and he came back to us and said, I don't want to play on a PvP server, so we switched, and we became Alliance. And we switched to a PvE server, and that's when I played my very first main character, which would end up being my druid. And that whole experience, while it was fun to level up, and I have a lot of really good memories from that, when I think truly back to that experience, I didn't play the game for like a month because those servers were constantly down, and it was so bad that Blizzard gave everybody a free month of subscription. I mean, think about the cost lost on that one because of these server issues. And to some experience, or to some degree, the experience is kind of the same. The servers were having so many issues on Monday because of crashing and because of population and queues that it gave a lot of people that vanilla experience. And I think that it was kind of cool and annoying at the same time. However, Blizzard did come in and fix the servers pretty quickly, and since then have been running quite well, minus the crazy amounts of queues going on. Although they did hotfix the servers to allow more people into the game at any given time, which means that the server queues have gone down significantly, about half of what they were before. So that is really nice. But the tech that Blizzard is using to make sure that this can be stable is a thing called layering, which basically puts players, a certain amount of players in a single zone in a different phase. So think like the multiverse, you got imagine you have 1,000 people playing in one zone. And these are just made up numbers, just to give you an example. Imagine you have 1,000 people playing in one zone. It will break that up into 10 zones and put 100 people in each one. So you won't see those other 900 players, but you will see the 100 that you're with. And then if you get invited to a group on one of the other, shards or layers, as they're called, and that person invites you, and they have like a significant amount of people in the group in that layer, you will transition to that layer, and then suddenly you'll see all the people that were there, and the people that you saw before will disappear. So it's kind of like this cool instancing tech, which they didn't have at vanilla launch, which is why the servers were so broken. It's because of this layering that the launch has been pretty smooth, minus the server queues, and that is the experience that people are having now, which is, again, not quite the vanilla experience. You think you do, but you don't. I think it goes back to that. You think you want the vanilla experience, but you don't. You don't want the servers to be down for a month and not be able to play. And Jay Allenbrack was correct on that one. However, people do want to play vanilla WoW, and that is without a shadow of a doubt because of just like the queues alone have shown the popularity of the game. So now that we've gotten all of that information out of the way, let's kind of talk about the experience as a whole for me so far. Like, what are my opinions on Classic versus retail, and am I enjoying it? Like, what's going on here? Well, I would say, personally, I am absolutely loving it. I am having such a good time, and I didn't think I would. I've done a couple Classic videos before, back like when we got the BlizzCon demo, and when the beta came up and I got to play a little bit of that. I was like, yeah, this is cool. I'll play it. I'll enjoy it. I'll have some fun with it, and we'll see how far I get. Maybe I go and raid and whatever. Like, I'm not expecting big things out of it. And then I finally get into the game and I start playing, and I'm like, why am I having so much fun? Why is this so good in comparison to retail WoW? Don't get me wrong, I like them both, but why am I enjoying this? So I've sat for the past several days of playing, just trying to figure that question out. And in fact, we have a raid team that we raid with on retail. In fact, we just took down Ashara, so that felt really good on heroic. And now it's like, okay, now it's time to start working on mythic. And I'm feeling really good about that. We're in a good spot as far as retail Warcraft is concerned. We're enjoying it. We're having a lot of fun. But why is it that you have some people, you have a handful of people who are like, Classic is amazing, you guys need to come play Classic with us, and then having a good portion of the retail players that we play with being like, no, I'm never going to touch it. So what is that disconnect? Why are there people who want to play it? Why are there people who don't? And why am I having so much fun playing it versus people who really don't want to touch it? Like, I'm trying to figure out this giant puzzle piece in my head all week, and I think I've kind of cracked it a bit. And that's because I feel like Warcraft Classic has something that Warcraft Retail does not. And that is the world of Warcraft matters. If you've played World of Warcraft for any length of time and you've consumed people's content, it's likely that you've come across the phrase that the star or the main character of World of Warcraft is not the player, it is the world of Warcraft. And that is very much true for Classic Warcraft. It is not the case for retail Warcraft. And I think this is a big reason. I think there's many reasons why I'm having so much fun, but I think this is a very big reason as to my enjoyment factor of the game right now. I feel like every little thing I do within Warcraft Classic matters. Like, everything has a consequence to it, whether that be a good consequence or a bad one. For example, I can run around, I could be questing, I could be killing mobs, and if I pull one too many, and I'm suddenly in combat with 3 things rather than 2, and I die because of it, that's a consequence, right? That's a consequence of not paying attention, or not moving quickly enough, or not being in the right position, or stuff like that. And that sounds frustrating as an experience. Like, I don't like dying, because then you have to run back to your corpse and blah, blah, blah. Now, with that said, I do play a warlock, and I now have unlocked soul stones, so I can resurrect myself and run away, which is totally fine, and it is a strategy I've used several times. But at the end of the day, having the consequence of being able to die and having, your progress set back a little bit, not in like a literal way, but just in time, is a good thing to have. If you die in retail Warcraft, you're doing something wrong, especially while you're leveling or just doing quests. Like, if you're dying, there's something really wrong going on, because in retail World of Warcraft, you are a demigod who is running around with superpowers and can just defeat anything they come across, especially if you're a reasonably good player. In vanilla Warcraft, that can't happen. you have to be careful. The world itself, the world of Warcraft is dangerous. And if you don't respect that, you're going to die a lot. And I think that that is a very important key thing to have while leveling up, because suddenly everything you do while leveling and questing and anything that has to do with combat has consequence. But it's not just that stuff. It's not just the combat that has consequence. It's the choices I make for my character. Am I going to be a tailor or a herbalist or an enchanter? Well, no, I've chosen to go tailoring because the gear that I get while leveling up and the bags that I can make as a tailor matter to my character. In fact, when I get to max level, there's several best in slot pieces for my character that I can make as a tailor. I have chosen to go tailor over some of the other ones because I want to make that experience easier for me, and I want to be able to make money off of that, whereas the other people that I'm playing with have chosen to go do other professions. They're not locked into it because it's the best profession for them or because it'll make them a ton of money. They're choosing to do these things for various reasons, which I find fascinating. Every choice I make in the game matters. Whatever I do with my talent points, you know, you get a talent point every level after level 10, or once you have level 10 and then on, which means that you're putting talent points in, which are little incremental upgrades in some cases until you get to like big, huge talents that give you big bursts or big abilities that make a big difference in your character. You know, those little talent points, while they seem little, they make a big difference to feeling like you have some kind of choice over what you're doing on your character, where in Retail Classic, you don't really have that. You have talent rows essentially that you unlock when you level up, and you get to choose one of 3. But most people have looked at, you know, what is the most ideal thing to do for your character? What's the most optimal thing to do for your character? And you've just kind of gone and chosen, you know, the 6 or 7 different talents that are the best for your character, and then that's it. You don't really have a choice over the matter unless you want to play suboptimally. You could make that argument for the talent trees in vanilla World of Warcraft, and that is the case at max level. You know, if you're not running certain talents for specific pieces of content, you're probably going to be running suboptimally, you know, and that is not a good thing. But while leveling up, there is no clear choice as to what to do. And in fact, your choices on your talents are going to change based on your leveling experience. I'm leveling solo at the moment. I've gone back and I've respec'd my talents because suddenly having my imp out as a warlock isn't a good idea. That sucker dies all the time. It does a lot of damage, but upgrading him to do that kind of stuff, you know, to make his damage better or make his buffs that he gives me better isn't ideal anymore because I'm not running with another player who I'm worried, you know, or who I'm not worried about and is able to come and like heal me because they were a priest. Suddenly not having that means I have to change the way my character works and I have to change the focus of my talents. So I've reset my talents. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm having an issue with this one thing while leveling it. It is my downfall, you know, whether that be getting interrupted while casting or needing additional healing. So like upgrading my health stones that I can make. Like these are choices that I'm making for my character, and I'm not going and looking at what's the actually. I should take that back. I have gone and looked at what the optimal talents to level with are, and I started using them, and I realized they weren't working for me because they're different than what I need. And what I need is my own choices based on my own playstyle. And that has gone for every character that I've made so far. On top of that, you know, you have different choices that matter within the game as far as, you know, where you're going to level up or are you playing Horde or Alliance? That kind of stuff matters when you're choosing what race to play. You know, are you going to play a warrior? Well, are you going to tank or are you going to DPS? Do you want to raid or do you want to just kind of play casually? If you want to be the best in the world, you know, the optimal thing to do if you're going to tank is to be a Tauren warrior. But if you're going, this is obviously if you're playing on Horde, but if you're going to be DPSing as a warrior and you know you're going to play arms because that is the best DPS one for the orcs, then you're going to play an orc because you're going to get a crazy two-handed axe and you're going to, you know, beat face with it. Whereas if you're playing on Alliance, that changes suddenly playing a warrior because Fury is really good for the Alliance for, I believe it is humans. So it's like these little tiny things. It makes it feel like the game matters. Everything you do makes it feel like it matters. And the world has consequences, whether that be good or bad. The world of Warcraft itself is the star of this game, and it is dangerous. And it demands your respect. And that is the key to why I'm having so much fun. Because when a world like that immerses you and it demands your respect and it teaches you that your choices within the world matter, suddenly some magical thing happens where the world becomes real and you get kind of teleported to it. And I think that right there is why everybody's nostalgia is so strong for this game, because that is what vanilla Warcraft was. It was a place that you could escape to and you could be in that world forever. And that, for many of us who played in vanilla Warcraft, is our experience. And to go back to that is why we're having so much fun. If you're the kind of person who's ever played a tabletop RPG, such as D&D or Pathfinder, or even some of the Star Wars ones, or even like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, like any of these kind of tabletop RPGs, if you played those, you know what I'm talking about. Because suddenly you go from feeling like you're playing a video game to feeling like you're in control of a character in a different world. And that is what World of Warcraft Classic has done. And I'm shocked that I haven't noticed that sooner. It was until this week, after thinking about it, that is why I'm having so much fun. I'm enjoying the fact that everything has consequences, that my character matters, and that everything I do and all the choices I'm making are because of different things that I want for my character, not necessarily because I'm trying to make the most optimal choice so I could be a top tier mythic raider. And the differences in retail versus classic, I've come up with a really good analogy, essentially. I would say that retail versus classic is the same discussion as two completely different games comparing them. So, for example, if you compare retail, the version of World of Warcraft that you could go play right now, it is Devil May Cry. To me, that is what it is. It is a very polished game that plays extraordinarily well, has a ton of really good content for it, and you're not going to find really another game out there that plays as smoothly as retail does. Now, don't get me wrong, it has its issues. It has plenty of issues, especially Battle for Azeroth. But the gameplay itself is so solid, and the systems within the game are amazing. You look at the fact that you can just hot join on people and be in their party all of a sudden and in their shard or their layer, whatever you want to call it. And it just all works seamlessly. It's perfect. And the game plays, and now granted, I play a Demon Hunter, so this is a completely different experience for some other classes. I understand that. But the game plays so freaking smoothly that I liken it to Devil May Cry. Whereas I look at a game like Classic and I say that this is like Dark Souls. If you compare the two, they are two very completely different kind of games. They're both action games, sure, yeah, whatever, but you would never say that someone who likes Devil May Cry must therefore like Dark Souls. Those are two very different kinds of experiences that you're going for there. One is over the top and crazy, and you feel like you're a superhero because, you're playing as, well, I guess it depends on the Devil May Cry you're playing as, but you're playing as like Dante, or you're running around just destroying everything. It's really fun. That is what retail is. It's not bad, it's just different. And then you have the classic experience, which is like Dark Souls. It is difficult, and it is intentionally so. So the people who like that kind of experience, who like things being a little slower, a little bit more difficult, and where you have to take the time to think and make choices on your character because those are what are going to matter for your success. And not all of the choices that other people are going to make are the same ones that you should make. Like that kind of stuff matters. And that is why I think Classic is more like Dark Souls. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't like Dark Souls. I actually really don't like the Dark Souls games. I think that I have tried several times, and every single time I try, I just end up quitting because I can't stand this experience. But the point still stands that I feel like Classic is Dark Souls and retail is Devil May Cry. There is absolutely nothing wrong with enjoying one or the other or both of those games. And if you're the kind of person who wants to play retail WoW and you don't want to touch Classic, then whatever, don't do it. If you're the kind of person who wants to play Classic and don't touch retail, then that's your choice. But I would urge people to try both. I think that both are very valid. And I think that players who play Classic will learn a lot about retail. They will learn about the decisions that were made along the way, whether those be good or bad. And you will come to a conclusion on the Warcraft franchise as to whether or not you think certain things should change in the future. That is without a shadow of a doubt. That is what is going to happen if you play Classic. You are going to come at retail with a different perspective, whether that's good or bad. And I think that that is really important for people to do, because that is what Blizzard is going to do. They're looking at the success of Classic and the fact that so many freaking players are jumping in that they're having to boost up all these new servers that they weren't expecting to do, and that they don't necessarily want to do because they don't know what the population over the long run is going to be. So they don't want to like roll up new servers and then just have to condense them all later. You know, they're looking at this excitement around Classic, and they're going to go back to the drawing board with some of the retail stuff, especially with the next expansion coming up. And they're going to say, what is it about this that people are enjoying? And they may come to the conclusion that it is because the world of Warcraft is the star and has given characters choices, and those choices have consequences, and that is what makes the game fun. And if they take that kind of stuff back to the drawing board, whether I'm right on that or not, or they come to a different conclusion, it doesn't matter. They're going to go back to the drawing board for the next expansion, and they're going to try to implement some of that stuff. So if you're the kind of person who wants to play retail World of Warcraft and you don't want to touch Classic, I urge you to at least try it, especially if you've never played vanilla Warcraft before, because you're going to find yourself smiling when you find certain things that you either remember as references that people have referenced to, or just things that you're like, oh my goodness, how can it be this way? This is so bad. Like a really good example is spawn rates on some of the quest monsters are just absurd, like 5 to 10 minutes. And you're just sitting there picking your nose, waiting for people. But the fact of the matter is, while you're sitting there waiting, more and more people are stacking up. And suddenly you have 5 or 4 other people around you who are all waiting for the quest mob, and you invite them. And now you're all in a party of 5. And now you're just kind of sitting there waiting, and someone starts talking. And then all of a sudden you all start kind of talking to each other. And you're all having these social interactions, and you're like, oh, this is a different experience. I'm not used to this, you know, because in retail World of Warcraft, you don't do that. You get into a group and you never say a word to each other, and someone steals something that someone else could use, or, you know, doesn't want to give something over that someone else can use, and they're really rude about it. Whereas in Classic, everybody is rather nice. It has a couple different reasons. One of them is because you're on the server that you're on. They're under server transfers, so you're kind of stuck playing with the people that you're playing with, which means you kind of want to keep a reputation for yourself, a good reputation. Otherwise, you're not going to get invited to groups or guilds or anything like that. So that's important. But at the same time, people are just generally nicer because you're all in this together. You're all trying to beat the World of Warcraft because it is so difficult, and that is really fun. And that little group of people that you got into to kill that rare mob that took way too long to spawn, but finally you got it down. Now suddenly you're all running around doing quests together, and you decide, let's go do a dungeon. And that kind of experience is not something you get in retail World of Warcraft. And I want that experience for everybody. I want everybody to experience what an MMO actually can be versus what an MMO is to a lot of people. So how can you play Classic WoW? Well, first off, it comes with your subscription. So if you have a World of Warcraft subscription, you have a Classic WoW subscription. It's added in. You automatically get it by having World of Warcraft and having a subscription. So do that. All you need to do is just buy the base version of the game, which in a lot of cases comes with like a 30-day free thing for your subscription. So if you're interested in trying Classic, you could do it that way. If you already have a World of Warcraft account, you just resub and you can download Classic and immediately start playing and play with everybody else. And I just can't wait to see what happens with this, because it's an experience that has really only ever happened once, which is with the RuneScape relaunch. And now that they're redeveloping that original like classic RuneScape into a completely new game, and I think that's cool, but I don't know if I want to see World of Warcraft do that anymore. I think I want to see them run the classic servers, maybe add in Burning Crusade and Wrath at Lich King over time, but for the most part keep it as what it is, because I think that everything from Warlords of Draenor onwards, so Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth, that to me is all World of Warcraft 2. World of Warcraft launched a long time ago, but from Draenor onwards, I think you have World of Warcraft 2, and that's the age that we're in, and World of Warcraft 2 needs to change a bit. It needs to take some cues from old classic WoW, because people are clearly really loving it, and not just for the nostalgia factor, because new players are jumping in and being like, this is amazing. Why didn't anybody ever tell me about this? And I think that's cool. But it's just an interesting experience, and this is a once in a lifetime experience that you're never going to get again. You know, people would have said that about vanilla launch, and that was true. And it's super lucky that we're getting Classic WoW to launch again. You know, it's weird to think about, but in the last 20 years, the largest MMO launch was, and one of the largest game launches period, was World of Warcraft. The second largest game launch, MMO launches, is World of Warcraft. And this is the time to jump in and kind of be a part of that, especially if you've ever had a conversation with somebody where they're like, oh man, I was in on day one and it was crazy and you should have been there. You have the chance now, and you should get in here and try it, because it is a unique experience that is not replicated by any other game out there. So yeah, I think World of Warcraft is a fantastic franchise, and I think Classic is definitely really, really good and better than I remember it being. I remember thinking back, you know, when the beta was up, thinking like, I might enjoy this for a little bit, but I'm going to get tired of it. And that is definitely not been the case. If anything, I'm sitting here going like, man, I really wish retail would have some of this kind of stuff, because it just doesn't feel like I have any choice over my character in retail. I don't feel like there's any consequence in the world. I don't feel like the world is good, and where they're going with the story is cool, but they need to add consequence back in. And if they do that, then the game is going to be good for me. But I am excited to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments like what you guys are thinking about Classic. Do you think that you are going to jump in and play it? Do you feel like you want to or you don't want to, and why not? You know, I think that's the big thing. Why don't you want to jump in and try it? It's basically a free game as long as you have a Warcraft subscription. You know, I want people to try this. I want people to re-experience this, because there's a reason World of Warcraft is one of the most defining games of all time. And this is one of those reasons to jump back in and kind of see why. So with all of that being said, let me know in the comments below what your guys' thoughts are, but we shall see you guys next time.